I'll be real with you. I do not have the best genetics for bodybuilding. I'm definitely not one of those guys who just looks at a dumbbell and grows. When I started, every single cut made me look skinny. Every bulk made me look quite soft. Partly how I executed, but over the years of consistent effort, I've been able to build a decent physique I'm pretty proud of. Now, don't get me wrong, got ways to go to get to my goal, but if I can do it, anybody watching this can too. We're going to cover the 4 ways to build muscle faster and transform your physique. And now is quite literally the perfect time. We're coming out of summer, headed into the fall, soon the winter, and some of you may not have been able to get shredded this summer. Now that's fine, but let's change that for next year. And the truth is, the way you do that isn't by going into another diet. It's by building the muscle now so that when you do get lean, you actually look like you lift, because we all want to be shredded, but the reality is you can't be shredded, bro. I know. Hard pill to swallow, but you don't have the muscle. And the reason you don't have the muscle is because you haven't gone through a productive growth phase. So let's talk about that. When it comes down to dieting, being shredded, the amount of muscle will always be a limiting factor on the condition you can get it. So if you're a skinny guy, you need to grow. You need a little bit of muscle to then be able to achieve the condition you're after. So first things first, and no, it's not a calorie surplus. It is effective training. Because if you're not training effectively and you go into a calorie surplus, you will not gain muscle. The surplus of food will just go towards body fat. Now, the body adapts. Muscle is an adaptation. Your body doesn't grow tissue unless it has a reason to do so. So if we want to gain muscle, we need to give the body a reason to gain that muscle. And the way we do that is by applying the following. We need to be training progressively every single week. We need to be following a training plan that meets your individual needs, which means following a training plan that allows you to make improvements that you need, which is systemic growth, growing everywhere. You don't need a bigger chest. You don't need bigger biceps or bigger delts. You need bigger everything. So don't make the mistake of trying to go into a specialized split of prioritizing certain muscle groups and neglecting others potentially, because at this stage, you need to grow everywhere. Alongside that, when you're in the gym, make sure you're performing the exercises with the same setup, the same execution, same exercise order, and standardize that so we're able to apply progressive overload in a repeatable, measurable way, which is how we're going to get the best muscle growth outcomes. Then, of course, we have to push every set close to or to failure. And you'll know if you're training hard enough if you see that concentric tempo involuntarily slow down. The slower it gets, the better. Then simply progress over time and get stronger within your program and rep ranges. Pretty simple. Now onto nutrition. Some of you are skinny because you've never actually been consistent with eating, which is the most common case. You tell yourself potentially you've got a fast metabolism, heard it a million times, but the truth is you just don't eat enough across the course of the week. You'll eat a ton of food on the weekend, but then you'll undereat Monday through Thursday and then wonder why the scale isn't moving. So if you think you have a fast metabolism and that's why you can't grow, but you've never consistently tracked your food intake, I don't want to hear it. So step one, simple. Track your food. Every single meal, every day, use MyFitnessPal or Chronometer is my preferred choice. Whatever app you like, not one of those AI ones though, but enough guessing. Now, nutrition for building muscle isn't complicated, but it does have to be structured. If you're not hitting your protein intake daily, if you're not spacing your meals across the day, and if you're not eating enough calories to support recovery, to support your training, you will not grow. That is the reality. Intermittent fasting, intuitive eating, skipping breakfast, those might work for fat loss phases, but they are massive limitations when your goal is to build muscle. If you're intermittent fasting, as an example, you're missing multiple opportunities throughout the day to spike muscle protein synthesis, which we want to have as high as possible across the day. So as many times as we can spike that, the better. So ideally, you're eating 4 to 5 meals spread throughout the day, which will give you consistent protein feedings, stable digestion, and it keeps your glycogen topped off for training. And for those of you pushing high food, like let's say you have to eat up to 3,500, maybe 4,000 calories a day, which is unlikely, but nevertheless, structure is non-negotiable. If you start pushing your meals late, if you start combining everything into a massive like feast at 10 p.m., well, not only are you going to tank your digestion, you're going to ruin your sleep, and then you're going to end up waking up full the next morning, and that's going to throw off the whole next day. And that's how progress can very easily stall. So we want the majority of your diet to be built around whole foods. So lean proteins like chicken, beef, eggs, whey potentially, carbs like rice, oats, potatoes, sourdough, fats from sources like avocado, nuts, extra virgin olive oil, nut butter, dark chocolate, and most importantly, at least 2 to 3 servings of fruit and veg per day. Now, when your calorie requirements climb high enough, you will need to bias towards calorically dense foods. You're not going to eat, let's say, 4,000 calories on chicken breast and broccoli, but this doesn't mean we go to the opposite side of that spectrum, all processed foods either. So if you get to that point, or even if you're struggling with your appetite on your current calorie intake, let's say you're eating 3,000 calories and your appetite is still an issue, that's where things like granola, jams, honey, organic fruit juices, and dried fruits, which are a huge hack, can come into play. So we got to eat. A surplus is required to grow, but don't mistake that for dirty bulking either. More food doesn't mean more muscle. You don't need an 1,000 calorie surplus. You don't even need a 500 calorie surplus per day. That's too much. You need enough to consistently drive the scale up slowly while your lifts are progressing, which looks like 5 to 10% above your maintenance calories, depending on your output and how tightly controlled your lifestyle is. Now, on to recovery. To build muscle fast, you got to train hard, of course, but you got to recover harder as well. Recovery is the process that actually allows what you do in the gym, allows muscle growth to occur. So, without enough recovery, the stimulus you create in the gym never actually gets translated into new tissue. Now, first, sleep is the biggest lever we have. So, getting 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted, high quality sleep is the foundation. And this is really where we get the most bang for our buck in terms of recovery. For example, it's when growth hormone peaks. Growth hormone and circadian rhythm are also tightly linked. Side note, so if you can go to bed, wake up at the same time, you're doing your body a favor. It's when glycogen stores are replenished, your nervous system resets, and a ton of other positive things occur when you get good sleep. But if you're consistently living on, let's say, 5 to 6 hours a night, or just a sporadic sleep schedule, you are placing a ceiling on your progress no matter how well you train or eat. So that is one thing to know. So at a baseline, like I said, try to go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Do your best to control light exposure in the evening. Keep your sleep environment cool is the biggest one. If you're trying to go to bed hot, you're ruining your sleep, and dark. And then treat sleep like it's a key part of your program, because just like your training or diet, it will dictate your results. Next, we have to do our best to manage stress. Now, I get it, life happens, but just elevated cortisol is directly catabolic to muscle tissue and will interfere pretty substantially with your recovery. So we're going to focus on what's within our control here. If you're in a constant state of sympathetic drive, so the fight or flight side of our nervous system, because let's say your caffeine intake is way too high, you're constantly living in a reactive state, you're never taking moments throughout your day to downregulate, get in that parasympathetic tone, you are missing out on the very adaptations you're chasing. So I like to think about stress management a little differently than what you generally hear, because I get it, just adding more stuff on your plate can just create more stress. What I've done that has made a massive difference in my life is, first, read the book Obstacles the Way by Ryan Holiday. Huge mindset shift that I quite literally apply every single day. Next, 10 minutes of morning meditation. Everybody has 10 minutes in the morning. I use the Insight Timer app. I just finished the Waking Up course with Sam Harris, but Insight Timer app is free. You can go ahead and use that. 10-minute timer in the morning. Focus on your breath, and your nervous system will thank you. I'll tell you that right now. And number 2, I do 2 minutes of guided breath work before meals. I use an app called State for that. That'll put me in that parasympathetic tone. And then last on the list, so 4 things in total, is walking outside in nature without listening to a podcast or music. No stimulation. I promise you, if you do those things, not only will your physique change a hell of a lot quicker, you'll be surprised how much muscle you'll build, but your enjoyment of the process will actually go up substantially as well, because you'll be far more present. And lastly, on the topic of recovery, which I neglected for years, probably why it took me so long to build, like I said, what I think is a decent physique, is managing training volume. More sets, more volume, more hours in the gym does not equal more muscle. Often there's an inverted use. So the more time you spend in the gym probably starts to go downhill. Muscle grows when the stimulus is sufficient and the recovery resources are available to adapt to it. That is huge. That means being aware of training fatigue is non-negotiable. Only if you're someone who trains hard enough, of course. If you're still new to the gym, I wouldn't worry about this too much, because the likelihood you're pushing your sets to a point where enough fatigue is accumulated, like to actual, let's say, 1-2 reps in reserve, to warrant, let's say, a deload, is quite low. But nevertheless, standardize your execution. So how you perform each exercise week to week, then progress, try to beat your reps, increase weight, but also recognize when to deload, when to reduce volume, and in general, prioritize quality over quantity. If you're going in the gym and you're able to progress your lifts every single week, that's a great sign you're recovering and positive adaptations are occurring. If you're not, though, you need to either pull back on your training volume, so reduce the number of sets you're doing, or deload because you're no longer recovering and fatigue has accumulated. So train within your recovery capacity and you will be making the most progress possible. Now, to tie everything together, you can have the most well-designed training split, detailed nutrition plan to the macro. Every single micronutrient is accounted for, your hydration is on point, and you got a recovery strategy in place. But unless you execute consistently and then monitor the process, adaptation will eventually stall. Muscle growth is not achieved in a single training session or a single full day of eating or one night of good sleep. It's the cumulative effect of repeated exposure to progressive training, number one, sufficient nutrition, and recovery sustained over months, if not years. So we want to ensure that we're moving in the right direction every single week. I don't personally like leaving anything up to chance. I don't like guessing if I made progress this week, and we do that by tracking. So first, performance in the gym must be tracked. Progressive overload is the fundamental driver of muscle growth, but it cannot be applied if it's not measured. So like I said, standardize your exercise execution, record your lifts, and then evaluate your performance week to week. So are you progressing? Are you able to beat your reps or beat your load? And I would use something called the double progression model, which is essentially where you set your rep range, let's say 5 to 8. You go in on week 1 of your training plan, you pick a weight. You're going to have to guess what you think you can do between that 5 to 8 rep range. Let's say you picked 45 pounds on incline dumbbell press, which is quite light, but let's say that you're starting off. I'll take it easy here. 45 pounds, let's say you got 6 reps. Okay, perfect. Next week, you're going to try to get 7 reps. Then the week after, you're going to try to get 8 reps. Once you reach 8 reps, that's when you up to weight the 50 pounds. Now that'll send you back down the rep range, let's say to 5 or 6 reps, and you repeat that process. You climb up the rep range. Once you reach the top, you up the weight and rinse and repeat that process, and that's how you kind of guarantee progression. So tracking is huge, and it will allow you to determine if progression is occurring or if adjustments within your programming need to be made. So you're not just sitting there blindly not making progress for 3 to 4 weeks, which would be the case had you not been tracking your lifts if your lifts were no longer progressing. So since we are in a productive growth phase, we have the nutrition. You should almost be progressing every set, every workout, provided your nutrition is on point and you're recovering. Now, a big one, nutrition must be tracked with the same precision. If you've never consistently tracked your food, it is not valid to claim you cannot grow because of your metabolism or something crazy like that. In nearly all cases, inconsistency in eating is the limiting factor. So at a very simple baseline, protein must be hit daily, meals should be evenly distributed across the day, and then keep that structure in place and maintain it across both weekends and weekdays. A lot of people go hard on the week and then just throw the plan out the window on the weekends, because consistency over a long duration of time is what will allow you to make as much progress as you can. So that also means not hopping from training plan to training plan or different calorie targets when there's no need to make a change to your nutrition, but putting in place a repeatable process that you can sustain for your life, which honestly for some of my clients, it may not look like what's quote unquote optimal, but it has to be optimal for you. And that's the big point. So you're able to execute it on a daily basis over weeks, over months, potentially years. So now look, you've really only got 2 options. Option 1, you keep doing what you're doing. You do a little 4 to 8 week bulk, then you try to cut again and continue to wonder why you never actually look any different every time you cut. Or option 2, you commit to doing this the right way. You take the next 6 to 12 months and dedicate that to a productive growth phase. You train effectively, you dial in your nutrition, you look to gain 0.25 to 0.5% of your body weight per week to limit fat gain while maximizing muscle growth. You adjust your nutrition by adding in 100 to 200 calories when your body weight stalls, not 500. And when training performance stalls, you may not even need to increase your food every week. Let's say 1 week your body weight stalls, but your training performance is still flying, you're progressing every lift. You don't need to increase food that week. And then put the same effort into your recovery and actually go ahead and build some muscle tissue. Because the truth is, the condition you want to achieve, the physique you want, is built off the back of a productive growth phase. So I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.